now we're back and we've got our oysters that we're going to shuck. We've got our oyster shucker, and we're going to be doing these Damarascata oysters that were shipped fresh to us from Maine. So hang out with me and let's get it done. Plating them on a plate with some shaved ice, and then we'll just do an oyster on a half shell presentation. So a little bit about the oyster that we got. They're called the Damarascata oysters, and they come from the Damarascata River of Maine. And the meat of this oyster is very pleasant and it's very plump. After the oysters are harvested, they're placed in cold seawater to purge them of any of that sand or grit that they might have inside. This process brightens up the flavor of the oysters, and what you end up with is a mildly sweet and lemony oyster. And they are very, very good. They're very delicate and they're very sweet, and they have that briny, salty taste from the sea. It's just a really delicious oyster. So now you're going to have to know how to open up the oysters. It's a learning process, and you're going to get better as you go along. There are a few tips I do have. You're going to want to use a towel to wrap the oyster in and to have a firm placement. You want to keep your hands and fingers out of the way for sure. You're going to have to apply a lot of pressure to unlock that hinge, and it goes pretty fast after that. So you're going to wrap it up. You're going to find that hinge. That's where the oyster shell comes together, and it'll pop open as you shove the shucker in there. And then you just go all the way around the bottom of the shell, opening up little by little until you get all the way around, and the top shell will come free of the bottom. And then you sort of scrape the connective tissue from the top and from the bottom. And you want to turn the oyster over. You want to retain much of the nectar or the liquor of the oyster. So when I was doing these, I wanted to make sure that I did wrap that to protect my hand from the shucker with the towel. And as I went around, some of the shell did chip off, but that's just part of it, and you just want to make sure that doesn't end up in your finished oyster product. There's really no easy way to do it. Some opened easier than others, which made me very happy. Others were a little more difficult. One just wouldn't budge. So here you want to make sure you scrape everything out, and then again you want to separate the oyster from its shell, and you just gently flip it over. Make sure you leave that nectar and liquor in there. That's what makes the oyster taste so yummy. And when you're all done, it's a job well worth doing, and it'll just make you appreciate it more when you go out and order oysters on the half shell from a restaurant. It's a lot of labor intensive to get just a little bit of goodness out of there, and see, oops, there went a shell. But you just make the most of it, and it all worked out, and we were able to enjoy these wonderful Maine oysters for Valentine's Day, and I highly recommend trying it on your own. We did order the shuck from the company as well. We didn't have one of those at home. Okay, so once you're all done, you're just going to plate them on some ice and keep them in a chilled room until you're ready to use them. We're going to use these in about, half hour or so they'll be good to go. And join me back so you can watch us eat them. So now it's time to eat the oyster. I put a little bit of cocktail sauce on mine, and then it's just up to your mouth, and you just put it in and kind of roll it around in your mouth to taste that sea water goodness, briny flavor, and it's just so yummy and good, and you'll totally enjoy it.